Hiya, I'm Lou.
Hi, John.
Again, we're so sorry we have to go through this every time for those who have to listen to it every time, but we have new members coming in every week, and these are our videos. We try to do them every week. They're called Heart to Heart. They are completely unscripted, and that's deliberate. We wanted this to be us. This is us talking to you, trying to make it natural. We don't really discuss what we're doing before we start. We know roughly where we're going. We just...
we discuss a wee bit so that we're actually on the same page.
We do.
So that we're not talking about two different topics altogether.
Yes, we do a relative little bit of planning.
But we don't go into it in depth.
No. So the subject here, I've brought up, I think, partly because of the situation of lockdown that we're in, and partly because I had a conversation with my son. And this was about something that he thought had happened that actually hadn't happened, and he'd been living under a delusion, quite a sad delusion, about when he moved out and why he moved out. And I didn't tell him because I was trying to protect him. He kind of said, this is the sentence he came out with in the end, he said, I'm glad you protected me from a lot of things, but I think by that age, I really would have done better, knowing what was really going on. And there's lots of reasons that you don't tell your children. You're trying to protect the relationship they have with their father or their mother. You don't want to burden them. But of course, we have to talk about this now in lockdown, because you might have done a brilliant job of keeping this away from your children. But I suspect that isn't going very well at the moment. They're not even at school, you know, so what's happening will become clearer and clearer, I think.
Yeah, I think this lockdown is exposing an awful lot of issues that, to be honest, could be glossed over. When normal life was going on, people were coming in and out the house, you were going in and out the house. You know, the drinker might be drinking outside rather than in the house itself. So things were kind of fluid. Now it's, if all the statistics are to be believed, and I don't see why they wouldn't, then drinking is actually escalating. Some people are using alcohol to cope with the lockdown. Even people who didn't have an issue before, some of them are drinking an awful lot more than they were before, and people who have had an issue, then that's escalating as well. But the other thing, of course, is the visibility of it. The visibility of it is because, you know, unless you have a mansion, then it's much more visible because you're in the same house, in the same rooms at the same time.
So I think the first major point is, even if your kids are quite little, they absolutely will pick up that something's going on. And it is very, very easy for a child to personalize that and to make it about them rather than about you. And that's the last thing that you want.
And that's particularly if you're not talking about it. And it's difficult to know what to say to them. But, you know, I'm sure you're aware of the term, the elephant in the room. You know, and the elephant in the room just basically means that there is this topic sitting in the middle of the room that nobody is talking about, you know. And children often pick up the fact that if that's the way you deal with situations, then maybe, you know, in later life they deal with them that way as well, you know, that, well, we ignore problems and they go away.
They learn the habit of denial and avoidance as
as
a
adults we
skill.
do that, you know. Oh, if I just ignore this, it'll be fine tomorrow.
Or you replay it in later life. I was just talking to someone the other day about people who buy into conspiracy theories. I think if you grow up in a situation as a children where something's going on, like somebody's having an affair or there's drinking or gambling or whatever, the elephant in the room is never addressed. You grow up thinking something is wrong, and so when you hear something like a conspiracy theory, it's almost as if you're ready to buy into that because somebody's saying, yes, there is something wrong, and it's like your psyche thinks, I knew something was going on, you know. So it does have an impact on your children as they get older. But then the question is, well, how much do I tell them, and what do I tell them? Personally, I think with little ones, I would go for euphemisms like your mum's always tired after work, or your dad gets a bit grumpy. We were talking about de-escalation in the previous video, which we do invite you to listen. If you're going to de-escalate something, you have to have a subject heading to talk about the de-escalation with kids, for example. So when your mummy is tired, then let's always go into the other room, or let's go out for a walk. So there has to be a label that you put on it. So I think my sense is use euphemisms until your children are old enough to twig that there's a relationship between the bottle and the drink beside your drinker, and the behaviour that's coming out. And then I think my feeling would be become more and more real about it, but avoid going to the opposite extreme and end up kind of sobbing on their shoulders and telling them every tiny bit of detail that you've been through.
Making your child your therapist. That doesn't work either.
No.
But it is a difficult one. It's more of an art form than an exact science. What you tell them, when you tell them, it's, you know the child better than anyone.
Yeah.
The one thing that doesn't seem to work is telling them nothing.
Yeah.
Because they have got vivid imaginations. And in those vivid imaginations, they start to invent things. Some of them might be true, some of them might not be true. Quite often the child falls into the role of rescuer as well. They could rescue the parents. But sometimes they fall into the role of perpetrator, because the parents are arguing, therefore it must be about them, and we have to be careful of that. Giving them a wee bit of information actually helps.
Yeah. So
it helps.
Yeah, so be clear with them. Also, it gives you a chance to discuss the emotions around it, which would be really helpful to them. I've just noticed there's a funny little thing, that's our skylight that you're picking up on this video. We try to do them in the morning, but we've had to do them in the afternoon today, so we're dealing with sun, which I'm glad to say is out today. So anyway, back to the subject matter. Now, the other thing that I think is really important is the disclosure that you want from your drinker. Okay, so you were the drinker. Why did you always lie about the fact that you were drinking?
How long have we got here? There was a number of reasons why I lied. I mean, in terms of lying, I could be quite versatile, because sometimes I lied to de-escalate, funnily enough, because I didn't want an argument.
Makes sense.
Therefore, if I said, I've only been for a couple of pints, even though I'm falling on the floor, then if she believes that, then, we'll just get on with the night, and she can just step over me from time to time. Other times it was because I wanted to go back out for a drink. Other times was because, I was ashamed of what I was drinking. Sometimes it was because, I felt terribly guilty because, she'd given me some money and I had gone and had blown the lot, whereas I should have blown it on something else, like food, silly things, I had blown it in alcohol. So the lies came in various guises. Most of the time I was reasonably honest about things, things in general, as long as it wasn't alcohol related. If it was alcohol related, then, I could be, shall we say, flexible with the truth.
And I suppose you want to avoid conflict.
I always avoided to avoid conflict,
that would be going on.
Yeah, I didn't really want to avoid conflict. Conflict wasn't what I was trying to avoid. It was disapproval. It was judgment. It was getting told off. Because I felt like a child sometimes, and she would start and I would go, and I would sort of, sulk, and I'm not blaming her. I would have done exactly the same thing, in fact, I did one time, because the roles were reversed. And I was boiling with rage until it came into my head, actually, this is what she does, went through so often, So, I mean, I do understand. But I was always trying to avoid being disapproved of. I was always trying to avoid being told off, and I was always trying to avoid fights. because sometimes the fights lasted for a long, long time. You know?
And above all, if you own that you're doing it, you might be asked to stop doing it. And that's the very thing that a drinker doesn't want to do.
I was trying to avoid having to promise I wouldn't do this again, because deep within myself I knew that was going to be another lie.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
funnily enough, lying to avoid lying. You know, so there were lots and lots of reasons. It wasn't just one reason.
No.
It wasn't just one reason.
And I have to say, I begged and begged and begged my husband to tell the truth. I sat and explained, and I explained that somehow the lying was almost worse than the drinking, because you felt you were going mad because they kept saying no, but you sensed something was going on. And he really got that I found it distressing, but somehow the drinking and the lying goes together. There's a saying, isn't there, in AA, how do you know
an alcoholic's lying? Their lips are moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit harsh that, but you know, sometimes it's not that far from the truth.
It became a saying because there was so much of...
it is, you know, and addicts lie. Addicts lie to protect their addiction. That's what they do, you know. If you think your alcohol is going to be taken away from you, you know, literally or metaphorically, then you lie to protect it. You lie to protect your stash. You lie to protect your supply. You lie to protect your freedom to go and drink. You know, you lie to protect the fact that you've already been drinking. You know, so there's lots of lies coming.
So you then get to the game, which I played for years and years and years, called Hunt the Bottle. And hunting the bottle gave me it gave me the sense that I wasn't going crazy, and the truth was there, and then I would have the bottle and I would confront the lie. And there was a satisfaction in doing that, except I spent hours and hours and hours of my time. And it felt very liberating when I realised I could trust my senses, and I usually knew quite quickly when they were drinking. And I understood the behaviour. So I kind of got in the end that I said to my husband, look, if you look as if you're drinking, if you're behaving as if you're drinking, I will assume you are drinking. And if I occasionally get that wrong, then you've got nobody but yourself to blame.
I mean, you know, as drinkers, we tend to do, we hide drink.
Yeah.
We hide drink, which is another way of lying, you know, because we're not being upfront about it, we're not being truthful. In fact, I'd given up drinking and I was moving house and I was still finding alcohol, you know. You know, it was kind of like one of those bittersweet moments. I thought, oh gosh, I could have done with that months ago, you know. So, but it, you know, but I'd hidden it. But the thing is, you know, many people say if you would only tell the truth, but they are telling the truth in some respects, you know, because you've got 5 senses. And all of those senses can tell you whether somebody's been drinking or not drinking. You know, you can smell it a mile away usually. You know, even vodka, you can smell. You know, you can see in the way that they're behaving. You can hear it in their voice. You know, so I mean, it's there. The evidence is in front of you.
Yeah. So what he's saying is the lips might lie, but the behaviour usually doesn't.
Absolutely.
And so you read the behaviour as the truth rather than what they say.
Yeah, you don't have to be told the truth to know it's the truth.
And it is better to reckon with the fact that the two go together rather than keep explaining to your drinker, would you rather they wouldn't lie. This, of course, is more real in binge drinking situations where it comes and goes.
Yeah. So, you know, you were saying that you felt that you were going mad. Well, you don't need to feel you're going mad. You just look and say, oh, they're drinking, you know, you're drinking.
Yeah, believe yourself. Don't start kind of thinking that your senses are lying to yourself, because they're not.
But I mean, after I got sober, I mean, I have helped a lot of people get sober, you know, and many of them lied to me. Many of them, you know, even friends that had tried to get sober, they would stand in front of me lying to me, you know. And I remember one particular guy, you know, he was lying away a bit, and I could smell it. And eventually I just tapped him in the, you know, in the breast pocket here, because I could see the bulge of the bottle. I just tapped the bottle, you know, said, and what's that? What's, you know, it was
like a
it was like a cartoon, you know. Yeah. Who planted that on? I thought, oh no, was that me at one time? And the answer was yes.
Yeah. And you'd almost be better to kind of be amused by the fact that they're really trying to lie when something is so obvious, rather than scorn. Scorn is very understandable when you live with a drinker, but it's very, very undermining of the relationship. Just comedy, just to laugh at yourself and say, if they really think they're hiding something. So try and find amusement rather than scorn, if you possibly can. Depends how long you'll be putting up with it.
But drinkers do think they're hiding it. They do think they're pulling one over on you, I mean, I was 3 months sober, and I was in work one day, and I was saying to a couple of people, I've stopped drinking, And they just looked at me and they said, we know. I said, how do you know? And go, oh, for goodness sake. Because I thought nobody knew. I thought, because I never told them.
Yeah.
But everything about me told them.
And that brings us to the thing about disclosing to close members of the family. Yes. Chances are they already know.
Chances are they are actually trying to save your face, save your shame, they by saying they're entering into the conspiracy. And the conspiracy, is back to the elephant in the room again. They know it's there.
Yeah.
They know what it is, but they're waiting for you to bring it up.
And I think actually...
And they might find it's a relief once you bring it up.
Absolutely. So I was going to say, if they know, if you say, look, perhaps you should know during the lockdown that I think my partner's drinking more than they should, then generally, because they usually do know, the fact that you can talk about it with them rather than them worrying that this might be going on and nobody's talking about it. So it might actually be a bit of a relief.
Yeah, a reaction is very often, oh, thank goodness you brought it up. I've been dying to say something for ages.
Absolutely. One final thing, there's enough mistrust already in relationships without going from there to, I will never trust you again. Just trying to avoid that. Because, like, for example, John says he was pretty honest. My husband was very honest. The only time he ever lied was when it was drink related. So don't then just call him a liar, because that then erodes even more of the trust that you're constantly is under threat. So just accept that lying and addiction go together. And try and remember that that's to do with the problem. It's not a personality defect that's rising in your partner. I mean, it might be, there might be lies, but generally it's the addiction that makes them lie. And so when you say they lie, I find the lying that goes with the addiction with you really distressing.
When you go and you find, you get a whole heap of people who have sobered up, who've been through the problem and have sobered up. You find a really nice bunch of people, very honest. Very often they're very honest, they're very hardworking, and they are really very kind. The alcohol blurs all that, But even when I was drinking, I considered myself honest, I considered myself honourable. I said this in a previous video. The fact that I didn't, I very often didn't come up to my own standards was because of the alcohol, and because of trying to protect the alcohol, protect my addiction. That was what it was about.
You'd almost be better, because we're always trying to remind you in this programme the love that brought you together with your partner. You're almost better in that place to say, I find you really truthful in most areas, so it is painful when you lie about the drink. Then you're finding some affirmation of what is truly what brings you to this site, rather than a divorce lawyer, because you love your partner and you know deep inside they're really decent. So again, affirmation and care of what was and what could be often is really helpful to bring people out of drinking, rather than keep telling them how they're failing, and that just kind of pushes them more of their guilt and shame, of which there is much.
However, I will say one thing, that it wasn't just about lying with me. It was about stealing as well. And not from outside, but I would steal from my wife. I stole from her bank account, I stole from that, and I would lie about that, because again, I was lying about the alcohol. I was lying about my source you know, to protect my source. That's what it was all about. So in that respect, you know, I was not to be believed either.
And just to say, if you're going through that with a family member, it is really distressing, because trust is an integral part of love.
Yes.
And when people lie about either money or the drinking, then it does hit you a very, very deep level.
Yes, and it's very difficult to put back together again.
Yeah, so I really want to acknowledge that. The fact that we're giving you some strategies to get past it.
Yeah.
We do totally understand it is a really gutting thing and really very hard.
And even though we're saying all these things, you know, if you're getting angry, you're getting frustrated, if you get really mad, nobody can blame you. No one can blame you at all. The only thing is, you know, it doesn't do anybody any good, particularly not yourself. So find an outlet.
Yeah, talk to your friends or your family, get on the forum. Remember, John, in this environment is half pricing for people that can't. I mean, not that in American terms, what you charge is very, very little. You'll pay a UK rate, and you know you have people all over the world, don't you? As long as you can reach a time zone agreement. You know, so again, if you want to talk to John therapeutically, you know, he's lovely, he's very experienced, and I do recommend him. I do recommend you, I do.
Yeah. I charge her as well. She's good full price.
I pay the price all the time. I live with you. I'm paying the price.
Yes.
This is a good time to finish, isn't it?
I think that's a very good time to finish. Yeah. I thought I'd give you a discount.
Anyway, actually, he is lovely and I love him very much. Right, so we're going to go now. This is disintegrating.
Yeah, so this is becoming a soap opera.
Yeah, we'll be in touch again soon. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.